Good evening, members. It is 7 o'clock. And welcome to this planning committee of the 16th of March 2022. Before we go into the business of the committee tonight, I would ask you just to stand for a few moments, including members of the public and our officers, just to put our thoughts to what's going on in the Ukraine. So if you wouldn't mind. Thank you, members. Right, once again, welcome. As always, just a little bit of housekeeping. I must read to you. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs, either through the security door to, I always say this, but my right, your left, which is the door on my right. Use the corridor and the stairs where you came in. Please do not use the lifts. Officers will be available to assist you, and if all being well, we don't have fire alarms go off, but the officers will bring you back when it's safe to do so. And please form on the green in Hawley Square. Does anybody here this evening wish to film the proceeds of the meeting? No, thank you very much. The restriction of the use of mobile phones, would everybody please make sure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls in the chamber whilst this meeting is in progress. Notification to the planning committee. Would members please note that agenda item 6, which is number 60 Northumberland Avenue, will not be discussed at this meeting as the application has been withdrawn by the applicant from the planning register. Would any member who wishes to speak, who's not on the committee, under Council Procedure 20.1, please show the hand now. Councillor Trevor Shonk. And what item, Councillor Shonk? Thank you. Thank you very much. Public speaking. The following application has been reserved for public speaking. Would members please note that item 4F, we have public speaking. Thank you. Moving on to the agenda, apologies for absence. Agenda item 1, I have received apologies from Councillor Coleman Cook, Councillor Hart, Councillor Rzeski, who I believe John is over there standing. Thank you, John. Standing in. Also, Councillor Paul Moore. Are there any other apologies? Thank you, members. Agenda item 2. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the planning committee held on the 19th of January, 2 months ago. Do members agree that the minutes of the planning committee held on that date be approved by myself? Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Orban, seconded by Councillor Wright. Do you all agree? Thank you, members. I will now hand over to Mr. Livingston, who has a point of information.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a point of information on two of the items before Planning Committee this evening. One on schedule item 4F, which is Stirling Way. So in addition to the reason why the application is being reported to members as stated in the report, the development also represents a minor departure from policy E01, which is the Euro-Kent flexible uses policy for parts of the site adjacent to the access. So the area is going to be identified to members in the presentation, and the policy will also be outlined for members' consideration this evening. On schedule item 4G, which is the land to the north of Fairlawn Road and the west of Northwood Road, Broadstairs, the report as published does not include the comment from Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Council, and I just wanted to apologise for the omission of that comment. For members' reference, the comment reads, the Planning Committee of the Town Council has considered this application and has resolved unanimously to recommend refusal. The committee strongly objects to this proposal due to the layout and density of the buildings, the well-being of future residents in an area of overdeveloped land, the impact on the parking and accessibility for the road. There is a lack of information regarding the treatment and retention of all trees and vegetation in the area of development. Additionally, for that application, one plan of the street elevation for the development has been updated as it incorrectly showed the neighbouring properties adjacent to the scheme, and therefore condition 2 on that application is updated with the correct plan reference, which is PL 1.1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Agenda item 4 is scheduled planning applications and public speaking. Agenda 4F is the land on the north side of Stirling Way, Ramsgate. Speaking in favour of this application, Mr. Hume. Mr. Hume, are you? Replacement. Oh, replacement. Yeah, I thought you had changed. You may stay up there using the microphone if you wish. Okay, thank you. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. I represent Kentish Project, a Thanet-based house builder. Our aim from the start of this journey, when we submitted the original application 3 years ago in March 2019, was to deliver 1, 2 and 3 bedroom housing for first-time buyers. We did not think that this would be controversial because the site is allocated for housing in the adopted plan and had previously been granted permission for development as part of a larger scheme. It is relevant that there is a 45-metre distance of separation from the closest part of the 2 developments from the school, and the 3-storey element is 60 metres away from the school. The 2-storey height, and in places 3-storey height of the apartment, is, we believe, in keeping with the character of the area and is well designed in our view. This conclusion has been supported twice by your Head of Planning. The October decision to grant permission was later challenged on procedural grounds, not on the planning merits of the decision. But because of the suggestion by the school that the council decision was biased because Thanet Council, along with Kent County Council, were perceived as a financial beneficiary of this grant of planning permission, it had actually taken 18 months from our submission of application after a number of rounds of design changes with the case officer. We really do not believe that there could be any suggestion of bias because of financial gain from this decision. Following the judgment in July 2021, we have talked with the school and additional information has been prepared relating to the air quality, highway and noise, as well as an updated appropriate assessment. All statutory consultees have considered the application in the light of the High Court judge's decision and support the recommendation for approval. In summary, this site will deliver 38 smaller dwellings for first-time buyers, of which at least 11 will be affordable homes. Another important point is that the scheme will be sustainably constructed with cutting-edge modular construction, and the residential accommodation will be highly energy efficient. This scheme will deliver other benefits, including significant financial contributions to other special education schools at Forelands Fields, 25k to improve play equipment at nearby Jackie Baker's, and a medical and community facility contribution focused at Westwood of circa 38k. For these reasons, I would request on behalf of Kentish Projects as a local house builder that 3 years after we originally submitted our proposal and 18 months after we originally secured approval for the first time, that the members support the recommendation so that we can start construction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think you look a little bit better than Mr. Hume. Speaking against this application is Mr. Milton, the head teacher of Laleham Gap School. Yes, if I can hold you there a moment, Mr. Milton. I will. Nothing to hide from you, I can assure you. Normally we have, members would know this, something from the Antiques Roadshow, which would time our speakers with coloured lights on the top of it sitting over here, and our clerk would push the button for the 3 minutes. We don't have that tonight. We have modern technology of a phone, but it will not buzz or make any sound when your 3 minutes is up. So I'm keeping an eye. Oh, it will chime at 3 minutes. So that's more exciting. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you, Estelle.
Good evening. Let me know when the 3 minutes start.
I think we can start. Thank you, Mr. Milton. Thank you for waiting there.
Thank you. Referencing pages 90 to 104 of your supporting documents, Mr. Timothy Corner, QC in the High Court of Justice, stated that the application on behalf of the council and under the scheme of delegation had to be determined by the planning committee. He stated the council had a clear financial interest in planning permission being obtained for development of the site as part of the portfolio of land interests conveyed to EKO by the council and county council. It follows that, in my judgment, this application should have been determined by the planning committee. So it was made clear that the previous decision by an officer was unlawful. The same judgment stated, I think a fair-minded observer would conclude there was real possibility of bias. Yet today, as a committee, you're proposing to defer and delegate the approval to a planning officer. To me, the apparent bias has never been more evident than now. I ask that, as a committee, you defer only and that you make this decision. Please do so carefully, as I feel that you are at risk of repeating a decision process which the High Court of Justice has already judged to be unlawful. This was at great expense to this council. The master plan included a density plan for this proposed residential development. It identifies this area of land for 20 dwellings. This planning application is for 38. This 90% increase in dwellings means that this application results in building houses within a few metres of pupils' learning spaces, play areas and recreational space. This 90% increase will result in 90% more air pollution, 9% more noise pollution, 90% more demands on the road outside Laleham Gap School than was originally agreed. Laleham Gap School is a special needs school for pupils with communication and interaction difficulties. 91% of our pupils have a diagnosis of autism. Many of our children are extremely sound sensitive. The developers did meet with myself, a summary of which is, we know it's going to be dusty and noisy, we'll do the noisiest things in holidays and we'll put up a fence. I do not consider this to be effective mitigation for the inevitable construction disruption to our pupils and their well-being and their learning. This planning application has been littered with mistakes from the beginning. The Environment Agency submitted, listed as Natural England, actually refers to 145 dwellings at Canterbury Road. So in reference to pages 107 to 113 of your documentation, the Council have not met the requirements of Regulation 63 of Habitats and Species Regulation 2017. The Habitat regulations have clear appropriate assessment requirements. There has clearly been insufficient assessment, which I understand is a failure to apply local plan policy SP14. In the 131 available documents, I cannot see, so I've got 10 to 15 more seconds, as it wasn't for
Please,
Just allow me
Please
to finish.
carry on.
Thank you. In the 131 available documents, I cannot see any reference to our school drainage system and the fact that our attenuation tanks are partly situated in this development area. Furthermore, when so many objections are from families with disabled children, I find it incomprehensible that there is no reference to the Equalities Act, no equality impact assessment. To me, this is a gross failure in your public sector equalities duties. When County Council chaired the contribution calculated earlier, it was based on 29 dwellings, not 38. This is clearly a saving to the developers and it clearly shows apparent bias to me. This highly dense development and the loss of community space will have a significant detrimental impact on Laleham Gap School and our community. Before making your decision, please scroll through the pages of objections listed on the planning portal. Thank you for having an open meeting. Thank you for your listening and patience and recording my objections and concerns. And I do want it noted that I dispute the 45 metres from the school, that I believe that to be incorrect.
Thank you, Mr. Middleton.
Thank you.
I do believe we have a Mrs. Jo Holden who wishes to speak. Mrs. Holden, if you're there, please. Again, you have 3 minutes. I shall wait till you sit down before we get Big Ben working. Thank you.
Is that okay? Ready? Yeah. Good evening. My name is Jo Holden and I'm parent to Lacey May who attends Laleham Gap. It's my intention this evening to give you a point of view from a special needs parent. The children that attend Laleham Gap all have autism alongside other diagnoses. These children see the world in a heightened state. Imagine all of your senses working in overdrive. Everything's a little louder, smells are stronger, and change is really frightening. Our children like familiarity, a structured day, and where possible, a quiet, calm environment. They do their best to control the environment around them, as this makes them feel safe. When changes happen they can't control, this often results in a meltdown. This is where the child can't control their behaviour, and it almost like reboots their system. Now imagine building works taking place next to your safe space. The change of routine, the noise, the smell, the dust, all invading our children's senses. I have real concerns over our children's mental health and well-being. Laleham is a safe haven for our children, where the staff work extremely hard to provide and maintain a suitable environment. With the new planning development, the road entering the school is going to be even busier. This raises concerns with emergency services being able to reach the school in a safe time frame. With the road being busier, this brings more obstacles to our children. My daughter, for example, is frightened of motorbikes, so if there's a busy road going through, she would be frightened and would stand with her hands over her ears. I know other children would bolt. There's insufficient parking outside the school as it goes, so the parents park along Zengal Place. This already becomes congested. Thankfully, the traffic using this road at the moment is that of the special needs, parents of the special needs children, so they're more aware. The school was originally promised a 20 square metre area between the car park as a nature garden. This in error was missed off the deeds. The now proposed entrance is going to be to a high density, overcrowded development, invading our children's privacy, overlooking the sixth form block and the children's play area. The need for SEN schools is in high demand. Would this land not be of better use to provide more spaces for those children needing specialist education? There are many children in Thanet out of school due to the lack of a suitable provision. Do the right thing. These are special needs children whose everyday life is already a challenge. Don't be responsible for adding more pressure to that of the children's lives and of their families. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I now call upon the ward councillor, Councillor Shonk, speaking under 20.1. And please, Councillor Shonk, can you keep...
Good evening, I'm Kent County Councillor.
Can you keep to the subject?
Yeah, I will do. I'm just letting you know who I am and where I'm at. I'm a Kent County councillor, so I do have a lot of dealings with these schools. Anyway, I had a phone call this morning, and the chap was quite knowledgeable about the whole effect here, and I actually asked him to turn up here tonight, but he said he'd prefer me to stand and talk. Sterling Way. Now, we're not against housing, it's the quantity. Laleham Gap School is a special needs school, and I'm talking for the children, which we all seem to forget. So we're not against the housing, it's the quantity. I've had lots of knowledge for these children, 1-to-1 and 2-to-1. It just, we're here to represent all the people that vote for us. You've got traffic congestion, Sterling Way, I've been up around there today, it's a complete nightmare. You can't get in, you can't get out. Air pollution, I don't know why, I'm part of KCC and I don't know why we get one saying, let's have more roads and roads, it's more traffic. When these children try to play outside, you're gonna have, and the houses are right next door, you're going to have music, lawnmowers, do it yourself, and they'll probably start complaining about the noise of the children. But it does happen. So here I am, which is not something I normally do, trying to speak up for the school, all the mothers that take their children to these schools, and it's hard work. It must be a bit of a respite to take them children to school. But if you go to Laleham Gap, the parents help out on there. So it's quite a privilege to stand here and actually speak up for the children, because they're the future. And if you see the minibuses and the distance they travel to these schools, all I'm saying is we're not against the housing, it's the quantity of housing right next to that school. I think I'm going to leave it there, but let's just say, let's think about the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shonk. Now call upon the planning officer, which I believe is Emma, to outline the report. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chairman. The application site is outlined in red on this slide. To the bottom of the slide is Sterling Way. This road to the northwest of the slide is Osengel Place. In terms of the surrounding area, this is Laleham Gap School to the top of the slide. You can see the Marlow Innovation Centre here, and then over on the right hand side here is Royal Harbour Academy, and to the left of the site is the business units within the employment area on Eurochem. So this is an aerial view of the site. So the application site is in this location here. So you can see the site is within close proximity of Westwood Town Centre. So Westwood Town Centre is to the top of this slide. Again, you can see that this area in this location here is the employment area serving business units on the Eurokent site. And again, here you can see Laleham Gap School. So this area, all around here on the left-hand side here and on the right here, and you'll see later in another slide the full outline, but this area is all allocated for housing in the Thanet local plan. To the south here, you can see this is Sterling Way, and you can see the existing residential properties on the estate. So this is a close-in view of the site. So again, the application site is this area here to the bottom of the slide. Again, you can see Laleham Gap School in this location here, the Innovation Centre, and Royal Harbour Academy here, and again the employment site on the left. And then this is just another view of it. So you can see again the design. This is now a sort of more of a 3D view, so you can see the height of the units and scale of the units, and the designs of the units. And on the left hand side here again, you can see the existing semi-detached properties in Sterling Way. And then again, a more detailed view. So you can see from this view that there's also a pedestrian link that currently connects from Osengel Place to Sterling Way. You can see the line through here, and there's some existing trees along the edge of Sterling Way. These fall outside the application site. So the application site is actually set back from Sterling Way following this line here, and there's a small buffer between the application boundary and the path in Sterling Way. So these are now photos of the site. So this is taken from Sterling Way looking towards the application site. So the application site is from this point here and back. So it's this area of overgrown land. On the left-hand side is the Laleham Gap School. So you can see it's a 3-storey flat roof building. Then you can see in the centre of the slide the Marlow Innovation Centre, and on the right-hand side you can see the Royal Harbour Academy. And then this is looking off to the east, so Stirling Way is on the right-hand side, and this is the existing footpath, cycle link. You can see some existing trees, these to be retained, these fall outside the application site, because again the boundary runs along this area here. And then this is again showing Stirling Way and showing the footpath connection that people are currently using to access Stirling Way. And then this is now looking further to the west. So again, you can see Laleham Gap School in this location here. And you can see, looking at these photos, the design and materials that have been used. So they're quite colourful buildings. You've got blue and white cladding used in this location. And then the Innovation Centre's orange. And again, a Royal Harbour Academy is again a colourful cladding has been used on these. So they're quite modern design buildings. And then this is looking to the far west at the existing employment units within Eurokent. So they're 2-storey with a curved roof and again a metal clad. So this is now walking towards Osengel Way. So this is currently a pedestrian link that is used. And then as I get closer here, this area of land is currently fenced off, but this is the location of the proposed access into the site. So the access would be from Osengel Place and not from Stirling Way. And then this is the current pedestrian link between the parking area linked to the business units, again with the application site on the right-hand side here. And now this is in Osengel Place looking back towards the application site. So again, the application site is from this boundary here to this boundary here, so in between the fencing. So the access proposed into the site would be in this location here, served off this road. And you can see the existing footpath and cycle link, and this would extend through into the site and extend back through onto Stirling Way. Then this is looking from that point now towards Hayne Road. So Hayne Road is in the distance. You have Laleham Gap on the right-hand side, and the access here is the access into the business units. And then this is looking back at the business units, just so you can see a close-up design of the units and the use of cladding and the modern materials and appearance. And then this is now looking at the access into Laleham Gap School. So you can see there's a wide access with drop curb for pedestrian crossing across that access. And then this is now looking towards the junction onto Hayne Road. And you can see that there's a small island in the centre here, and there's drop curbs that extend on either side of the road. So this is the policy for the site. So it's SP09, which is a policy for the development of the site for housing and commercial use. So the area within the dotted red line forms part of the policy allocation. The application site is this area to the bottom of the slide within this area here. So the site is allocated as a whole for 550 units. We currently have a pending application in for 500 units within this area here and this area here. So that's currently pending. And this proposed application is for 38 units. So the combined number currently falls below the 550 that the site as a whole has been allocated for. Then just so you're aware, this area here is allocated for commercial, and that has had an application approved for commercial development at outline form, with an element of that being full. And at the moment, we have not received any applications for this area here. But again, this area in the original master plan was shown as being employment land. So in terms of what was mentioned at the beginning of the discussion tonight, part of the site does fall outside the allocation. So this dotted line here shows the area that's allocated for housing, and this area here is actually outside of the housing allocation and is therefore covered by the employment land policy for the overall Eurokent site. So it would be a departure on the basis that it is using land that is allocated for employment, but given the fact that this is an allocated housing site and this is the form of access that would be to the site, and also given the fact that the site is actually quite small and could actually not accommodate a commercial development, it's not considered that there would be harm to that policy. So whilst it is a departure, it's an acceptable departure on the basis that housing would be achieved, and great weight is given to the fact that it is a housing allocation site. So this is the proposed layout plan. So as mentioned, it's for 38 units. So there's these terrace units here are blocks of houses. So again, blocks of houses here. These are 2-bed at the bottom. The rest of the houses are 3-bed. And then on the top right-hand corner, this is a block of flats. So this is a 3-storey building in the corner that accommodates 1- and 2-bed units. All of the houses are 2-storey. And you can see that there's parking courts off to the west here and up here to the west. And then the other units have parking to the front of the properties. So in terms of the impact on the character of the area, some concerns that have come through with the objections is to do with the general loss of open space and the fact that this area is used as recreation space. The site is allocated for housing, and therefore, given the fact that we would give significant weight to the fact it has a housing allocation, and given the fact that the site is located in quite close proximity to Jackie Baker's recreation ground, it's not considered there would be a significant harm to the area through the loss of this space for recreational use, informal recreational use. So it's not allocated for recreation, it's just that's how it has been used. In terms of the number, it's been mentioned a few times about the number of units and the fact that it was understood that there would be fewer units on this site. That formed part of a previous plan on the original outline application. That was a 2011 application, and that's no longer an extant scheme. So there's no reference to be made to that previous application, other than the fact that we have previously approved the principle of residential development on this site. There was no detailed plans at that point. It was just an outline application. And the suggestion that there was 20 units on this site was part of a parameter plan that was an indication of what could be achieved on this site. But the matter for members tonight is to consider whether this number of units actually results in harm to the current appearance of the area, or whether there's any other material considerations that would result in harm, such as harm to the school or neighbouring impact or highways. So that's the matter for members tonight, rather than a consideration of the fact that this exceeds a number that was shown on a historic plan. So this is the layout in more detail. So what's been proposed is blocks of terraces, and the reason for this is that regard has been given to the layout and design of the neighbouring business units, which are long 2-storey units. So whilst this site can be seen from Stirling Way, it's actually not seen in the context of Stirling Way, because there's a green buffer that separates the site from Stirling Way itself, and the properties all back onto Stirling Way, so they're not fronting Stirling Way and therefore aren't necessarily seen in the context of Stirling Way. They're more seen as seen from Ossinger Place, and therefore in the context of the buildings that I've showed you, which are the Leyland Gap School, the business units, and the Innovation Centre. So for this reason, the units have been designed in quite a modern way, with quite modern and sort of colourful materials to respect the character of those buildings. And in a similar way, this is how the pattern of development has appeared, in that this is respecting the layout of the neighbouring business units. And then in terms of the flat development, the appearance and scale of this is very similar to the building on the Leyland Gap School. So just to show you the elevation, so this is the flat development. So you can see it's a 3-storey flat roof building with modern cladding, so blues and greys and stone colours have been used. There's some balconies on it, and the elevations are quite staggered, so it's quite there's quite a lot of relief in the elevation, so it's not just one big block, it's quite staggered in the elevations, and the balconies give sort of projections coming out of the building. So in terms of it, the scale of this, so whilst it's a large building, again in the context of the other large buildings nearby, it's not considered to be out of keeping with those buildings. So this is just the floor plan showing the units. So it contains 15 one-bed and two-bed flats. So 9 of them are one-bed and 6 are two-bed. And then this is the 3-bed house design. So you can see it's quite an industrial appearance. So again, in character with the business units and the design that's been given to those units. So it's timber clad with metal cladding. Oh no, sorry, not timber clad. It's brick with metal cladding. And you can see an interesting roof design that's been used. So whilst it's a terraced block, the actual height of the buildings is quite low because it's a very shallow roof, and it will be quite an interesting stagger in the height of the roof as it goes along the terrace. So, and then this is the 2-bed units. So again, similar in design to the 3-bed, but slightly smaller. These are elevations, so you can see how it would look in the street. So the top elevation is the view from inside the site. And it's showing the ground level difference. So on the right hand side of the slide, this is showing the height of buildings within Stirling Way. So this is an example of one of the semi-detached units that would be in Stirling Way. This here is Stirling Way itself. Then you can see the setbacks, so the green verge that would be between the development site and Stirling Way. And then you can see the ground level drop. So this drops at 0.8 metres, and then you can see there would be 3 dwellings in this corner, and then you can see the flat development. And then this bottom elevation is taken from inside the site, so it's looking towards the northern boundary. So inside the site, you'd be looking at the flat block on the right-hand side. Then you can see there's sort of a spacious gap before reaching the block of 5 terrace units, and then due to the orientation of the units on the left hand side, you would just see the side elevation of that unit. And then so that was taken from inside looking towards the northern site. And then this elevation is taken from again inside the site but now looking to the south. So sorry, I just flipped back to that. So this is taken from the centre of this road looking towards these units on the south. So these are the 2-bed units. And you can see again the terrace row, so you can see the interesting roof form of those units. And then on the left-hand side, you can see the 3 units that were in the southeast corner of the site. And then this central slide is basically taken from Osengel Place, looking into the development. So you'd see the 5 units that would then face towards the access, and you can see the block of flats behind it, and then the side elevation of the 2-storey 2-bed terrace units on the right-hand side. And again, you can see the ground level change in relation to Stirling Way. And then the bottom slide is taken from Stirling Way. So this would be the view looking from Stirling Way towards the site. So you could, again, because of the ground level difference, you can see there's it's slightly reduced in this location here. And then you'll see the side view of the 3 houses, and again, the flat block to the rear. So in terms of landscaping within the site, hedging is proposed around the entire boundary of the development, and there's a suggestion that up to 25 trees would be planted within the site. So there's areas here that are showing the potential tree planting, and showing up to 25 trees could be accommodated within the site, and that would then form part of a future landscaping plan that has been conditioned. You can see that there would be the grass verge is in this location here, and you can see the footpath connection that would extend from the access way down to Stirling Way in this location here. And then in this far southwest corner, this area here is designated for grassland. So as part of the ecology assessment of the site, it was found that whilst reptiles aren't actually present within the site, there is some botanical interest within the site. So this area has been designated as grassland, and some botanical interesting plants that have been found somewhere else on the site are being relocated to this corner, and this area is being safeguarded for that. In terms of the hard surfacing, the parking areas are all due to be paved, so there would be, it's not just a mass of tarmac, there is paving in there amongst the tarmac for the road. And you can see in terms of general landscaping that every property has a rear garden area, and there's some areas of soft landscaping around the parking space that could be planted to create some softening of the development. So in terms of the impact on living conditions, for the properties in Sterling Way, there's not considered to be a significant impact on these properties. There's a 43-metre distance between the proposed development and the properties in Sterling Way, and there's the 0.8-metre ground level difference, so it is actually lower. So it's not considered that there will be any issues with light or outlook, and in terms of overlooking, that distance is considered to be adequate to prevent any significant loss of privacy, and they would be backing onto the front of properties as well, so no loss of rear amenity privacy. In terms of the impact of the school, this has been mentioned through a number of letters of objection. So concerns have been to do with the impact on the privacy of the students and overlooking of the central play area, and also of the accommodation block in this location here. So in terms of the distances, there's 45-metre distance from, and this was slightly incorrect in the report, so it's a 45-metre distance from this point here, this corner, to the play space within the centre of the site, and there's a 30-metre distance from the corner of here, so of Unit 6, towards the accommodation block. So the original application that came in, I'll just show you the layout. So this was the original layout on the site, and it did involve the rear elevation of all of the dwellings looking in the direction of the school. So there was concern raised with that layout. So this has been amended to reorientate this block so that the closest units to the school no longer have habitable room windows looking towards the school, whilst there's a single first floor side window within this block here. This is obscure glazed and high level, so this would not overlook the school. So the nearest windows to overlook the school would be within the rear elevation of these central units, so plots 6 to 10. And as mentioned, due to the distance and the fact that whilst this area here, which is the play space, this is I believe to be the main area of concern for parents in terms of overlooking. As I said, the distance at this point is the 45 metres from this unit here to that space. For these units here, the existing building would be blocking some of this space. It's considered that this distance is adequate to significantly or to prevent any significant loss of privacy for those students. I'll just show you this. This is just a plan. This is not an actual submitted plan. This is just a plan I've tried to create just to show you a visual so you can understand the relationship of the play space and the buildings. So it's not completely accurate, but I'm just trying to give you an indication of where the open space was, because it's difficult to tell on the black and white plans. So this is the field area here, and this is approximately the distance from the houses. And you can see the main orientation of these windows is actually looking over the parking area of the Marlow Innovation Centre, and it's not actually directly overlooking the school site, although there would be some oblique views from these windows towards that open space. And then in terms of the flat block, I think, again, concerns were raised to do with the fact there were some balconies on the front elevation of these flat blocks and the impact of this on the play area. This is 60 metres from the balconies here to the actual boundary of the school. So again, this is considered to be an adequate distance. While there would be maybe some long distance views, it's not considered to be harmful enough to warrant the refusal on that particular issue. In terms of noise, concern has been raised, as you've heard, on concern on the impact on the children within the school from the construction noise from the development. So originally, this was felt it could be dealt with through a construction management plan condition, but through the judicial review, it was considered that we should look at this issue in more detail. So A construction noise assessment has been submitted with this application, which considers the impact from the proposed development during construction on the school. The construction noise assessment has concluded that the impact would be acceptable but subject to mitigation measures. So this has included building an enclosure around the piling rig, which is likely to have the greatest noise impact, providing a perimeter screen of 2.4 metres high around the entire building site, and also limiting construction hours to between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday and 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays. So these hours of construction have been conditioned, and there's also a condition that requires the submission of the construction management plan that takes into account the mitigation measures that have been listed within the construction noise assessment. So this will again be fully looked at, but we have the mitigation measures that are needed in order to reduce the impact on the students in the school. Obviously, it's difficult to fully deal with that issue given the fact that the site is allocated for housing, and we would expect construction to come forward on this site. So it's very difficult to completely deal with any noise issues from construction, but through this report, it's looked to minimise those to reduce the impact on the children as much as possible. So in terms of the highway impact, so access to the site is going to be from Osengel Place in this location here. So the access is going to be in this far corner into the site, and you can see the proximity to the school access. In terms of I'll talk about the layout first. In terms of the layout, adequate manoeuvring and turning plans have been submitted. Tracking plans for large vehicles have been submitted, so that there's adequate turning within the site. There's 64 parking spaces, and this is considered by highways to be the minimum number of parking spaces required to serve the development, so that has been achieved within the site. As mentioned earlier, the footpath connection has been achieved, so there will be pedestrian movement through the site and cycle movement as well through the use of the path for bikes as well. And then a raised table has been proposed in this section here because of the fact that there's a bit of a bend in the access. In order to reduce vehicle speeds, the raised table was proposed in this location, so it will reduce the speed of vehicles as it leaves the site. Now, concern was raised again during the judicial review that consideration hadn't been given to the independent journeys of students and pupils to the school. So pupils are encouraged to walk to the school, and there's been concern that increased vehicle movements along Osengel Place could result in safety concerns for the students. So KCC Highways have been further consulted through this application, and an addendum has been submitted by the agent. The addendum has stated that in terms of the impact for pedestrians, the paths around the site are 2.5 metres wide, so the quite wide paths. The tracking has shown there's sufficient space on all of the roads to enable turning without any overhanging of the footpaths. And as mentioned, there was the raised table would reduce speeds of vehicles leaving the site and would allow an actual crossing point potentially across the access point within the site as well. So KCC Highways have come back and have raised no concerns with this. There's as you can see on this aerial view here, there's crossing points to the Central Island point here. So any children that are walking to the site from the south, they can cross this road here, and then walk round, and then there's a crossing point to the access to the school as well. And if coming from the north, there's a continuation of footpath all the way round. And then if anybody was coming from the Stirling Way direction, there's now the pedestrian link, a formal pedestrian link that's being created, and then the raised table that will allow for a safe crossing area. In terms of vehicle movements, it's been determined that there will be approximately one vehicle movement per 3 minutes, and that this is not a significant number of vehicle movements that could result in any highway safety impact. In terms of the actual off-site contributions, so with the original application, there were some contributions from the development to offsite highway works, but given the size of this development of only 38 units, it's not considered justified to request a contribution because it's not considered there will be significant harm from the size of the development. This has also been the reason as to why a transport assessment has not been required, because 38 units is quite a small number and is not considered to result in significant harm on the highway. In terms of air quality, again, through the judicial review, concern was raised with the fact that an air quality assessment has not been submitted. Through this application, we've reconsulted with Environmental Health, and Environmental Health have confirmed that an air quality assessment is not required. An air quality assessment is required either where the scale of the development warrants it, or where it's a highly trafficked pollution hotspot, or there's evidence of high pollution. Now, whilst Thanet is currently within an air quality management area, Thanet are looking to revoke this, as we've had several years of the air quality objectives not being exceeded. And in this particular location, there has been an area where there's been monitoring carried out, and it's shown that from last year to now that it's actually half the national objective. So it's actually a really quite good air quality area. It's not causing any harm, and therefore there's not a need for an air quality assessment. And given the size of the development, again, of the 38 units, it's not considered that would be enough to require an air quality assessment in this location. So in terms of other issues, there's 30% affordable housing that's been provided on the site. Financial contributions towards KCC, education and health provision have all been provided. This actually has been updated through this application. So where we've gone back out to consultation, KCC have come back to us and requested additional offsite contributions. So an additional £50,000 compared to what we were looking at originally has now been secured through this application that will go to additional social care and youth facilities within the area. So this is to be secured through a revised legal agreement. So whilst we already have a signed legal agreement for this site, because of the increase in the contributions, we are going to need a revised legal agreement securing those contributions, and we haven't yet received that. So that is the reason for the application to be deferred and delegated. It's just for us to receive the legal agreement. So obviously members are making the decision tonight on whether the application is acceptable, and we would be looking solely for it to be deferred and delegated just for us to receive that legal agreement to secure those contributions. And in terms of the appropriate assessment, so again, this was looked at through the JR, and it was concluded that our appropriate assessment needed to be updated. This has happened. We have consulted Natural England. A copy of the appropriate assessment is contained in the annex to this report. And Natural England have raised no concerns with it, subject to us to securing the contribution to the special protection area, which again will form part of the legal agreement that we're waiting to be submitted. So overall, it's a allocated housing site. Whilst a small part of it is within the employment site, we don't consider that will is harmful, and that it will actually help to serve the housing development. It's previously been approved as a housing development site, although the number have not been approved. And in terms of the actual number and scale and design of the units, we do consider that this scheme is appropriate in terms of the surrounding character and appearance of the area. And in terms of the impact on surrounding properties and the school, we do feel that full consideration has been given to these impacts, and mitigation has been dealt with where necessary. And this is all dealt with through the safeguarding conditions within the report and through the legal agreement that we are waiting for to secure the contributions. So it is recommended for defer and delegate, subject to that legal agreement being submitted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Anne, for your detailed report. I just bring in Mr. Livingston to add a comment, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to outline to members about the particular point raised with regards to the public sector equality duty that's been mentioned. And so I just thought it'd be relevant to just read that duty out to members so you are aware of it as a particular point. So this is section 149 of the Equality Act 2010, and it's that a public authority must, in the exercise of its functions, have due regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, harassment, victimisation, and any other conduct that is prohibited by or under the Act, advance equality of opportunity between persons who share a relevant protected characteristic and persons who do not share it, foster good relations between persons who share a relevant protected characteristic and a person who does not share it. In addition, having regard to the need to advance equality of opportunity between persons who share a relevant protected characteristic and persons who do not share it involves having due regard in particular to the need to remove or minimise disadvantages suffered by persons who share a relevant protected characteristic that are connected to that characteristic, take steps to meet the needs of persons who share a relevant protected characteristic that are different from the needs of persons that do not share it, and encourage persons who share a relevant protected characteristic to participate in public life or in any other activity in which participation by such persons is disproportionately low. Now, disability is a protected characteristic. In particular, the public sector equality duty does state that the steps involved in meeting the needs of disabled persons that are different from needs of persons who are not disabled include, in particular, steps to take account of the disabled person's disabilities. Now, in particular, this is something that has been looked at in quite a lot of detail in the officer's recommendation. It's considered in the report when looking at the issues of noise, of highways, of layout, as we've seen from the changes that have been made, as well as the relationship with the school. So by virtue of that work and what's outlined in the report, the duty has been an integral part of the formation of the recommendation that's been put to members this evening, and therefore in our view the duty has been complied with, even though there is no explicit reference in the report to it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ian. I do note that Mr. Milton has been standing for quite some time. Mr. Milton, I'm afraid if you wanted to speak, I'm not allowed to let you speak. That is part of the rules. It's not me being awkward, but I'm afraid I can't let you speak again. You've made your comments. No, I can't. Mr. Milton, I'm sorry, I can't allow that. It's I'm just moving on with the committee now for them to decide. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm now going to recommend the officer's recommendation be adopted. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bayford. Thank you. Right. I know we'll come to members. Councillor Everett first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was sort of waving vigorously at you because I wanted to speak first on the basis partly that I am the other Newington Ward councillor.
I beg your pardon.
That's right. And I have been contacted by a number of residents in Stirling Way who are very concerned about this application. But apart from that, I am a member of the committee, and obviously I'm looking at this very hard, and I have to say that it troubles me. I think the history of the application is unfortunate, to say the least. Nevertheless, I would defend the council from any accusation of bias. The fact is the council is its own planning authority, and if the council had owned the land outright and was selling it to a developer, it would still have been considering the planning application. So it's a bit of a non-issue. It's here before the committee. I think part of the problem here is that the actual application site is in Northwood, and the residents affected by it, which Councillor Shonk and I both represent, are in Newington. I note that the consultees in the available on the council system are the Northwood councillors, who I'm sure have important opinions about it, but they don't represent the residents who are affected by it. Councillor Shonk and I do, and I'm not in any way dismissing their contributions. I'm just making the point that we are perhaps more relevant in this case, even though the application site is in Northwood. Reviewing the history of the site, I think it's quite interesting that the principle of residential development was established by the 2014 appeal decision. And I remember, as I suspect Mr Livingston does, the original 2013 application being thrown out. Members of the planning committee at the time were not in favour of residential development of this area, and the government inspector overruled them. That's how we got to where we are now. Since then, there's been an adopted local plan which has been incorporated, but since then also a school has been built. And I hear the very eloquent case that's been put by the head teacher and by the other objector representing the pupil. And we do have to be mindful, very mindful of the impact of the children on the school. And I know that officers have done their best to follow the advice that's been given by the judge and mitigate those effects, but I personally am not persuaded. I also know, because officers have referred to it, that there is another planning application for 500 homes pretty close to the school likely to come forward. We're not here to consider that tonight. We can only talk about the application which is in front of us, but it does seem to me that this is a skirmish in a larger war, if that's not an unfortunate analogy in the present circumstances, because the amount of building that's going to go on in that area is going to affect the school. However, the school, when it went there and when this council gave whatever permission it gave for the school, or whoever gave permission for the school, will have known that the whole site was liable to be developed. So there are two sides to that coin, but it does concern me that we're in a position where the head teacher is coming here, clearly hasn't been involved in discussions with the developer. There isn't any meeting of minds between the parties. And I don't think that that's really very happy. I don't think the fact that it's taken 3 years to get here is of any relevance to the decision that this committee needs to make. And I would ask members tonight to consider very carefully what they are giving consent to, notwithstanding the efforts that have been made by officers and the excellent, very lengthy presentation we've been given about the detail of it. I personally am not happy to vote to approve of this tonight, and I'd ask other members to give careful thought to their position.
Thank you, Councillor Everett. Councillor Orban, I believe you raised your hand.
Thank you, Chair. I think for us all, it's a bit of a battle between the head and the heart. And I think, as Councillor Everett said, we need to think very carefully about this. You know, I really do sympathise with the head teacher, and oh, was he gone? Oh no, he's there. and also the lady in relation to the children at the school. I think there's one question just to get out of the way. One question, Chair, is does Thanet District Council either get any financial or any other business should this be approved? That's the one question. Whether that can be answered, whether our legal officer can answer that, I don't know. I think there's been other issues that have been raised. I'm mindful as well, listening to the head teacher in relation to the point he said about defer and delegate. I think should we, I actually accept that, and I think that should this be approved, we should defer and it comes back to this committee. Another question that I'd like to ask, Chair, is in relation to should we be mindful to approve this in relation to the construction of the site? Has any provision been made for within the application or within conditions in relation to vehicles of site workers? And the reason I'm saying this, Chair, is because I know, as well as a lot of us do, that whenever there's any site development, big or small, then the site workers park wherever they like, and they park up on the pavement, etc. And that I'm particularly worried about the students having to come into the school if they're blocking the access for the students to come into the school. So I would need to know whether any provision has been placed there. And thank you, Chair, and I look forward to listening to other members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Before I bring in Councillor Bayford, I'm going to bring in our legal officer, as you've mentioned, Councillor Orban, who may well be able to answer one of your questions. Thank you, Estelle.
Thanks very much, Chair. Councillor Orban, in answer to your question, the issue of the benefit that might arise for the Council, just going back to the judgment in the judicial review, the benefit identified by the judge was the benefit of the regeneration aim of the Council for the area. There is no financial benefit involved.
And Mr. Livingston.
Just to come back on the other 2 points. One, in terms of the defer and delegate recommendation, obviously members are very familiar with the idea of deferring and delegating to officers. It's not that you're deferring the decision to officers. You would be deciding to approve it this evening. All that the officers are getting is a new signed legal agreement. So if it was that members decided they wanted to defer to bring back, all that we would be bringing back is a copy of that legal agreement for you to look at. And obviously what we do is we get that checked by the solicitors. So in terms of the decision, that's the decision is being made this evening. There is no delegation of the decision in that way. You are deciding whether or not to approve or anything else. Just to pick up the point about construction management plan, that is particularly noted in the condition with regards to site workers. It's condition 11. And I absolutely agree with your point, Councillor Alban. It is a big issue with regards to construction workers, especially contractors onto sites. It is something that will obviously be very carefully looked at, not only on this site, but any others, but this one in particular. The reason we're putting on the condition is very specific. We have just recently served a breach condition notice on a developer in St Nicholas at Wade because of construction vehicles being parked not inside the site. So this is something that we're very, very familiar with, and it is something that we would therefore make sure is enforced. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Come back. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously, I totally understand what Mr. Livingston has said in relation to defer and delegate. Currently, I obviously know what that means. However, even though it is a legal agreement, which would be looked at by our solicitors and theirs as well, I do think in regards to openness concerning the judicial review, that it should come back, even if it's just that we read it and we nod and we say that that's agreed. But I do think that should happen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Alban said, it's very difficult to know how to progress on this one. I also have empathy with the issues with the school and the issues that are raised. However, a lot more houses are going to be developed on this site, the houses that we desperately need. We can't stand in the way of them, we need them. So how is the school going to adapt to these other developments? This one is relatively small and, in my view, fairly well planned. It's relatively low rise. There are green areas. I absolutely agree that the construction management needs to be very, very carefully carried out. But I can't really see that this particular development is causing issues above those that are going to be caused by the much, much larger developments which we have and which are going to come forward and we desperately need. So I'm afraid I really can't see any reason to object to it.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Crittenden.
I confess I'm a little torn on very similar lines. It has been drawn to our attention that there are other agreement areas in the vicinity for house building, and I know that's not a part of our consideration, but it has been mentioned, and this school is likely to find itself in the middle of a whole bunch more stuff. What I actually wanted to ask of Mr. Livingstone was grounds for refusal. Are disturbance to the school and the children in the school caused by construction a ground for refusal?
It's sort of partially covered in the judicial review to an extent, even though the judicial review doesn't actually give a view on whether or not there is an issue or not. It acknowledges that obviously construction, and we talk about this quite a lot, construction has noise impacts, and obviously refusing an application on the basis of construction noise, when obviously that is just part and parcel with development happening anywhere, would be very, very difficult to sustain as an impact to refuse an application on. In this particular instance, it has been raised, obviously, as part of the judicial review, that we needed to further justify why we thought a condition was appropriate to mitigate it. The concerns were clearly that the judge felt that there was an assumption made that the condition would just deal with the issue. We obviously were working with environmental health to make sure that actually that condition would be sufficient to make a difference. Therefore, on the basis of the additional work that's been submitted and obviously the advice that we've taken from our environmental health department, we feel that the mitigation is sufficient, and therefore without the basis of any evidence to counter that, and therefore we don't have a demonstrable harm that we could demonstrate when put up against that mitigation, officers do not consider that there is a reason for refusal there for this particular ground. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Over, I was on that same planning committee, and it was a problem then, and kind of is a problem again. I'm actually between the devil and the deep blue sea, like everybody else, but I'd be happier if the extra houses that have been added onto the application, that would help to reduce something. I feel that maybe this is on planning. We see this all the time. The developers put in an application, and then surprise, halfway through they lop on some more, and I really don't think that's right. So my problem is with the extra houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Keane.
Thank you. I'm concerned about the quality of the development on a number of fronts. There was one comment made in the report about whether they met the standards size-wise. I mean, I'm sure they must have done, because obviously that would have been highlighted had it not been. But do they only just meet it? It is quite a dense development, and also I was concerned about the comments from the police about the safety issues of the design of it, and I don't know if I've missed it, but I haven't seen anything that has revised those plans to make it safer. So can we hear more about that, please?
Could bear with us, Councillor Keane, please. Bear with us, members, just to make sure they get things right. I think Emma.
Sorry,
Yeah,
apologies for
you,
this. We're
Emma.
just trying to find the policy that has the national space standards in it. But in terms of the area of the units, so the 1-bed units are 40. Yes, the 1-bed units are 45 square metres. The 2-bed units are 71 square metres. Some of the 3-bed are also 71, going up to 89 square metres. Yes.
So I'm just going to tag team and come in there. So in terms of the 1-bed units, that unit, which is, I believe it's a number of units which are 45. The standard is 39 square metres, so 6 square metres more. For 2-bedroom units, it depends on whether or not it's a 3-person 2-bedroom unit or a 4-person 2-bedroom unit, and the statistic differs. So it's 61 square metres, and for the 2-bedroom unit, that's 71 square metres. So again, we're 10 above, and with the other larger 2-bedroom units being 89 square metres, whereas the target is 70 square metres for the 4-bed ones. And similarly, the 3-bed ones are about a comparable amount over. So they're not wildly over, but they are sufficiently over so that they're not just hitting the exact mark on it. In terms of the comment with regards to the police, they've provided some detailed comments, as you've seen from the report. One is to do with a relationship between the apartment blocks and the recessed areas. It's not considered on its own ground that is an issue that would be sufficient for us to refuse the application in terms of secure by design and designing out crime, by virtue of where those entrance points are and the natural surveillance that you get by virtue of the fact that it's on the road, those particular entrances. In terms of the boundary treatments, that is something that's controlled, I believe, via condition to ensure that they accord with that. There's a bullet point list in the report which members can see about the heights that are required for boundary treatments. So it has been considered in those details, and obviously it does also cover the issue of parking and natural surveillance, which is something that we are mindful for when looking at the actual conditions to do with, again, landscaping, and it is something that would be looked at in that condition submission, because obviously, as you can see, you've got those 2 parking areas at the front of the site, which are not directly surveilled by certain dwellings other than the ones that have been turned perpendicular to the school. So what we'd be looking at through a condition submission is to just ensure that they are well lit effectively, so that there is that surveillance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Wing.
Thank you. I mean, I think if this was a school, if this was being built next to a school, a mainstream school where you didn't have pupils with additional needs, then I would be voting in favour of this. But I'm really aware of this site because I work 3 days a week out of the Royal Harbour Academy, and I'd like clarification on where the playground is, where the area that the kids play in, because I also think that the map is wrong, that the site of the playground is wrong. So I would like clarification on that. There's been nothing, and I taught for 26 years, and I worked in a school where there was a construction site happening next to the school I taught in as a senior teacher, and I can tell you the impact of the construction phase on kids without additional needs was quite horrific. So an impact on young people with additional needs, both in terms of the construction phase, but also once people move into that site and once there's movement to and from that site. I understand there'll be 1 car every 3 minutes, but that's not the way things work. People go to work at a set time. Young people arrive and leave from a school at a set time. And getting out of that Hayne onto that Hayne roundabout is very difficult, even when there is no traffic there. So I haven't heard anything that puts this, where the mitigations or the consideration of the impact on young people has been put in the context of students with additional needs. And these are students with additional needs that can't be fulfilled in a mainstream setting. So we're not talking about mild additional needs, we're talking about complex additional needs. And these kids are very sensitive to a whole range of things, and I think that there needs to be greater consideration of that particular group of students. If it was right close to the Royal Harbour where there isn't a significant number of students with additional needs, then I think that appropriate assessment and mitigations have been put in place. But I don't think enough has been looked at in terms of this particular group of young people. And I think if strong consideration isn't given, then there will be a significant impact on those young people.
Thank you, Councillor Wing. Do you wish to come back on that to talk about the playground, Emma? Okay.
Sorry, apologies for that.
Thank you, Emma.
So this aerial view, you can see the school in this location here. So I've not personally been to the school, but I've walked around the outside of the school and obviously looked at these aerial views as well. I have taken it as that the play space has been this area here, which is the contained space between the buildings, not this area at the front here, which is already completely visible from the road because there's railings and you can look straight through into this space. So I have, obviously it's also in relation to the proximity to the development, so I was assuming it is this area here because this is the area that is closest to the dwellings and is the area that is not already overlooked from the road.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, Pat Moore.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not so much asking questions as wanting clarification. I mean, in my opinion, the best people who know how to deal with these children are their parents and their teachers. I have an autistic grandson. I know what it's like. And we have a duty of care to these children. We can't let them go through something like this, which could do awful damage to their health and their mental health. And if this place, this site, I believe, is overdeveloped, and so we need more housing. But let's be honest, how many local people are going to live there? You can bet your life not many. And how many of the 5,000 people on the housing waiting list will live in them? Again, not many. So, and if all this is down to the local plan, I think the local plan is not fit for purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I'm coming back to Emma for a moment.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify, whilst I've said that I've assumed that it was the central area, the reason for this is, as you can see from this photo, the area to on the right-hand side, which I think the parent has just referred to, already has fencing that you can see straight through, so it's not a private space. So if you're talking about the area in front of the building, this area you can see has fencing, you can see straight through to that space, so that's already visible from people walking past. So
That's not the area the children play.
I read.
Aware of your early words. I'm here to offer help and support if you so.
Sir, it is rules of this committee meeting.
So this area here is the one shown. Sorry, this is the one where we just saw the photo. So this is the fencing that you can see through into this space. So this area here, you can already see into that space. So I'm not aware of any fencing or any boundary that completely obscures the view into this space. So that's why it was assumed that this area here was the private space that where concern is raised from the windows.
Please. To take on points with the headmaster regarding the playground, so it's not normally done because there are strict rules and regulations for this committee to adhere to, including me as chair. But as this is so important to everybody, we want to get it right.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Milton, I just wanted to confirm, obviously the area that we're particularly talking about in this instance is the area that is between, if you can see the image up there, between the parking area for the commercial units. You've then got the road, and then you have the area which is in front of the sixth form block. Obviously what we're referring to is that area, and when we're talking about that isn't from our view, isn't the play area per se. Is it possible if you can confirm, using the image above, if possible, where the areas are that are used by the school for the particular play area function?
I understand your confusion because in the first round of objections, the block, the Phoenix block, which is the nearest to the development, was a residential site.
Could you ping your sorry to interrupt.
It's not in front of the microphone, so I'd have to
Can you climb over? That's it.
So the area in front of what was the residential block did not used to get used by pupils because it's a residential block. And that's what's alluded to in the first round of objections. When this was resubmitted, the use of the Phoenix block has changed. It is no longer a residential block, it's a sixth form block. So the area in front by the road is used by our post-16 and year 11s during the school day. So I totally understand where the confusion comes from, because they're right. Behind the Phoenix blocks is the primary playground, and that's where the 45 metres comes from. But because of the change of use of the Phoenix block in the last 2 years, the area in front of the Phoenix block, right next door to where those 5 houses have been turned round to bring them right up to the fence, that is the recreational area of our year 11s and, well, actually it's year 10s at the moment, normally year 11s, and our post-16. And that's some of the frustration for us, is that there has been a change of use. So some of those objections which were submitted nearly 2 years ago can cause confusion.
Thank you. I will bring Mr. Livingston back.
Thank you for that clarification. So just to pick up the point that Emma Fibbins just raised, obviously in terms of the planning impact of this type of use, of residential use next to a school such as this, obviously we have to take account of the existing site circumstances. And obviously, as identified by the photographs and also by the image that you can see, that area itself is not private. It is not a private area in the sense of the visibility that's there. So our view is that the relationship is acceptable, and obviously that's what's outlined in the report. I am, though, conscious of the comments that have been made by members, and I appreciate I haven't actually spoken to the chair outside of this meeting about this, or in this meeting about this. But I think some of the confusion could be alleviated potentially if members were as concerned as you are by visiting the site. And I think that would then allow for members to both understand the relationship directly with the school. Obviously, it would need to be carefully worked out how we would do it to actually, if it was possible, to actually go within the grounds of the school, and that was something that we could work out. But if the chair is so minded, and the seconder, who I cannot remember who the seconder of the motion was, Councillor Bayford, were so minded that it may be worth potentially putting forward to withdraw that motion and to put forward for a site visit, so that we can cover these points and come back on some of the points potentially next time that members have raised this evening.
Thank you. Can I just confirm that photograph is at least 4.5 years old, and the hedging along has changed? Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Everett and Councillor Wing down on my piece of paper, but what was you've just heard from Ian, was going through my mind as well. If you still wish to speak, I'm quite happy to, but what has been suggested, I would stop you speaking and we would pull this, have a vote that you agree to pulling it, and have a site visit. But we have to go through, as you know, a procedure. You still wish to speak, Councillor Everett?
Chair. I mean, I think that would be an excellent solution. I think it's quite clear we can't make a decision when there's ambiguity about how the school uses the site, and that will give officers an opportunity to bring back a proper response to the points that have been made by the school.
Thank you.
So I think that's ideal.
Thank you. Councillor Wing.
I'd just like to confirm what the head says. It is several years old, and that the whole site is now screened with, I believe, screening and also planting around there. So it is quite misleading, unfortunately, that we haven't got up-to-date images of the site, because the school has made every attempt to actually screen the pupils from people in open view.
Thank you, Councillor Wing.
I just wanted to come back on that image. There is from 2 weeks ago.
I'm going to hold. Thank you, Councillor Orban. I know I have Councillor Crittenden and Councillor Bayford here, but I think I'm going to stop because the suggestion has been made. First of all, to do that, I'm going to withdraw this item. Propose that we withdraw this item from this committee tonight. I have to have the seconder, who is Councillor Bayford, agree with me, and members agree. Thank you. I therefore propose a site visit. A seconder, please, which is Councillor Orban. Do members agree? I think it does make sense. I know it doesn't matter how long we take. We've got to get this, for everybody's sake, right. So the site visit, which I didn't announce tonight, will be Friday the 1st of April. I won't say any more than that, members, but it's so. I will call that, if you all agree with the site visit, Friday the 1st of April, which will be 9:30. So would you please put your hands in the air if you are for that site visit? No, okay. Against? Abstentions? That is carried. So we will have a site visit Friday the 1st of April, and we will see for ourselves the concerns. And I thank you for your debate tonight, and thank you for your attendance. We'll get there. Thank you very much. Thank you, members and officers, for the report and everything there. That now concludes public speaking. I therefore would ask our clerk to read the other applications that are in front of you. If there are any of those applications you wish to call, please let me know. Charles.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Estelle.
We have 4A, 20 Windermere Avenue, Ramsgate. We also have 4B, 93 All Saints Avenue, Margate. We 4C, 147 Westbrook Avenue, Margate. 4D, St. Peter's Churchyard, Hopeville Avenue, Broadstairs. 4E, 1, 2, and 3 Park Lodge, Montfure Avenue, Ramsgate. And lastly, 4G, land to the north of Fairlawn Road and the west of Northwood Road, Broadstairs.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. 4G. Thank you. Could I have a proposer to move that those applications that have not been reserved be determined in accordance with the officer's recommendations? Could I have a second, please? Councillor Orban, do members agree? Thank you. Right, a bit of shuffling of paperwork here now, members, for a moment, please.
Sorry, Chair. All Saints Avenue. I'm not sure if we should discuss that one because it is Councillor Braithwaite.
We don't. Not
as long as it's on.
Unless it's. We don't have.
No. Okay.
No, we don't have to. I mean. No. It's on here for obvious reasons that. It is a member, so okay. Right, item 4A, which some shuffling paperwork around now. Excuse me. Yep, 20 Windermere Avenue, and then it is down for recommendation is for approval, and it's Mr. Livingston, I presume.
Thank you, Chair. So the application is for the erection of a single-storey rear extension together with a dormer window and some roof lights. So the site is identified with this Google image here with the red dot. So it's a bungalow in the Nethercourt estate. So this is the front photo of the front of the property. You can see the side rear garage here. So it's a slightly irregular plot because it's sort of diagonal to the back where the railway line is, and you can see the level difference there with the property in the middle and the level difference to the neighbour on the right hand side. This is the rear elevation, so now we're looking at the gap between the garage on the left and the rear of the dwelling on the right, so you can see that there is an existing rear extension on the back of that property. You've got the rear extension, as you can see, and you can see the neighbouring property also has a conservatory at the back, and you can see the boundary treatment on the left-hand side there. So this is just a longer distance view of the property itself. So we've got the existing floor plans, and then the proposed. So as mentioned, you've got a side and rear extension. So the rear extension, that's single story, is extending out by 1.4 metres from the existing to create an overall depth of that rear single story element of 3.9. You've then also got a side element which sort of attaches then to that garage that we looked at. And then you've got the first floor layout is on the right hand side there. So what you've got is a dormer window at the rear. You've got an ensuite which is served by the roof lights at the front. Worth noting this Juliet balcony here. So this has actually been moved as part of the proposal. Originally that Juliet balcony was on the left hand side, closer to the neighbour that's raised concerns. So it's been shifted over. So just look at the elevations particularly. You've got the existing elevations that we looked at in the photos. And then the proposed elevation. So what you've got there again is that the extension that you can see out from the rear, which is obviously includes that side element, and then you have the dormer window itself being put into that roof slope. So you can see where the dormer window is on the bottom right hand side there. So in terms of the relationship with neighbouring properties, in terms of the increase in depth by 1.4 metres, it's not considered that results in a sense of enclosure to the neighbour that's directly adjacent. You can see the relationship at the moment with the fact that you're effectively bringing that closer to the, closer to the where the photo's been taken from, but just by the 1.4. So the height isn't greatly above the existing above the existing boundary fence to impact on the conservatory that's next door. In terms of the dormer window, that has obviously been proposed. We have changed it to try and alleviate some of the impact on the neighbouring property, but actually the dormer window fundamentally is looking down the garden. It's not looking directly into the neighbouring property's garden. Dormer windows, as we know from discussing this, are normally permitted development in the rear roof slope. It's simply the size of it which is the issue here in terms of the scale of the development. And so overlooking down the garden and not directly into the side is the key element. The balcony itself is not one that you step out on. It's a Juliet balcony, so you can't actually look side to side to look into those areas, those private amenity spaces. And therefore it is considered that the development is acceptable, and therefore it's recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ian. I move the officer's recommendation for approval is adopted. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bayford. Members. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The reason I asked for us to discuss this, Chair, was that initially at the start of when the application was submitted, I was contacted by the next door neighbour. It's not my ward. However, as she was an elderly lady and she'd been given my name by another resident, I decided that it was the best part of valor to go and visit the lady. And her concerns on the original application was the Juliet balcony, which was located on, looking at this on the right-hand side, and having been in her rear garden and looked at what the development was likely to be, I was also concerned about the overlooking with the use of the Juliet balcony, because it would be right into her garden, and also the impact of the dormer window itself was worrying for her. However, with the change of the Juliet balcony to the other side of the dormer window, I do consider it to be acceptable, Chair. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Do any other members wish to comment? Okay, thank you, members. I'll put this to the vote for approval. Those in favour? Against? Abstentions? That is carried, unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Right, again, now moving on to the one that's been called, which is the land of Fairlawn Road and the west of Northwood Road in Broadstairs. We're doing well here, Emma. I think it's down to you again, isn't it? I ask the officer to give the report, please.
apologies for that. I did have it, but it decided to jump back to the beginning of the presentation. So here we are. This is the application site outlined in red here. So this is Fairlawn Road. Below the application site, you can see Northwood Road off on the right-hand side. And this is the aerial view of the site. So the site is allocated for housing within the Thanet local plan. It forms part of a larger allocation. So the application site is this area here, but in terms of the allocation within the local plan, this is the allocation in the local plan. So in the local plan, there's a notional 45 units that the site as a whole is allocated for, and this is just the small part at the end of Fairlawn Road that we're considering tonight. In terms of other considerations, the rest of this site is also allocated for housing, just so you're aware, because this comes into play later on when considering the pedestrian link. And then this is the closer view of the application site. So on this area, again, this is probably a few years old as well now, because we just use whatever is on Google as the aerial view of the site, and you can see that there are some trees located in this area here, and I think this was one of the concerns that's been raised with loss of trees. None of these trees are protected by a TPO, so you'll see in the photo in a minute that these trees in this location here are no longer on the site. And then again, you can see the view here. So you can see Fairlawn Road, you can see that it's pairs of semi-detached two-storey pitched roof houses, and the application site is this area at the end of the cul-de-sac. So this is now in Fairlawn Road looking towards the application site. So the application site is at the head of the cul-de-sac here. And now this is the actual application site itself. So it's overgrown. This is looking towards the western boundary. So there are some trees close to the western boundary. These are being retained. I think some of these actually fall just outside the application boundary, but actually have a spread that overhang the site. This is then looking towards the northern boundary. So you can see that the owner has started to put up a boundary between the application site before you, which is the area in front of the fencing, and the area behind, which is part of a pending application that we currently have in. So this, again, the view towards the site looking towards the north. So that's the far boundary in the distance of the overall allocation, but the actual site boundary of this site is again in this location here. And then this is looking over to the eastern boundary. So the eastern boundary follows that fence line. And this building and the building on the left here are part of the site to the north, so forming part of the other allocation. So this is back in Fairlawn Road, looking towards the nearest neighbouring property. So this is number 11, Fairlawn Road. There's a substation between number 11 and the application site, so you can see the access point there. So there's a slightly wider gap between this property and the application site. And this is number 12, Fairlawn Road. And you can see that they've extended with a two-storey extension, which goes right up to the boundary with the application site. This is then looking back towards the other end of Fairlawn. So again, you can see the building form within the road, quite consistent with the two-storey semi-detached design within the cul-de-sac. And then this is the view from Northwood Road, looking towards the existing access into the site. So this is the existing access into the neighbouring site to the north, which forms part of a separate application, but this is currently the only way in which the application site can be accessed. So the proposal through the application is to access the site from Fairlawn Road. So here you just can see the allocation within the local plan. So this slightly darker brown line here is the outline of the 45 unit allocation. So that's the overall larger site, and then this application site is just this area down here. So the proposal is for 6 dwellings. 4 of them are 4-bed, and you can see that it's 2 pairs of semi-detached properties and 2 detached dwellings. Each of the properties have 2 parking spaces to the front. In terms of the layout, you can see that it follows the pattern of development within Fairlawn Road. So the property is all front, the main extended access road to the end of the site, with the 2 detached dwellings set back from the frontage. And then you can see that there's a continuation of the road that extends off to the east, and this provides a small parking court area This contains 2 parking spaces that serve the detached dwellings. So they've each got 1 parking space to the front and then a parking space each within the parking court. And then there's 2 visitor parking spaces as well within that parking court area. You can see that they've each got quite deep gardens, again consistent with the size of plots that you can see within Fairlawn Road. So in terms of the general pattern of development, it is considered to be in keeping with the development within Fairlawn Road. So this is a closer view of it, so of the site plan. And then you can see there's a pedestrian access that runs through the properties to the parking court. And just so you can see here, this area highlighted blue, this is the area that we're looking at as a potential pedestrian connection to the neighbouring site. So some concerns were raised by residents regarding this becoming a through route that would potentially link onto the housing development that's being proposed for the northern site. That's not what is currently being considered. This is currently just an extension of the cul-de-sac, and then vehicular access would stop at this point here and just be able to get access to this parking court area. But we are looking at whether we can achieve a pedestrian connection that would go into the neighbouring site, and then beyond that would continue again onto Millennium Way, allowing for improved pedestrian connectivity to the town centre, which will come through next to Tesco. So in terms of the design, this is the design of the properties. So there's reference has been made to the existing properties in the road. So the general height and form is similar. So the roof pitches are slightly different, and the windows designs are slightly different, but the similar materials have been used. So they're looking to match the brick material to those properties in the road. They're also looking to use some timber cladding, which again is similar to some cladding detailing, which is within the existing properties between the doors and first floor windows. And roof materials again are looking to match. So in that way, it would be in keeping with the existing properties, but they are looking to slightly modernise the dwellings with slightly different proportion windows, slightly longer windows, and there would also be a small single-storey flat roof projection on the front of the buildings, and you can see that there's a slightly different proportion of the ground floor windows. Again, though, that's trying to mimic the proportion of the windows within the existing properties at ground floor level. On the rear of the semi-detached properties, dormer window. So these are the 4-bed units with the dormer window at second floor level. This is the side view of the semi-detached properties. So again, you can see the dormer window and you can see the small projection at the front and the rear. And then this is the floor plan of the properties. So you can see the 3 bedrooms at first floor level and then another bedroom at roof level. And then this is the detached unit. So these are 3-bed units. You can see these the front and rear elevations, again similar in design to the 3-bed units, 4-bed units, sorry. And then again is the side view of those properties. And again the floor plans showing the 3-bed units. And this is the other detached unit. So these are some street elevations you can see. So this these are looking towards the northern boundary from Fairlawn. So as if you were in Fairlawn looking towards the northern boundary, which would have some new boundary treatment erected along it. These are the semi-detached properties closest to you, and then further back you can see the setback detached units. And then this is a view as if looking from the northern boundary back into Fairlawn. So again, you can see the detached units. So the detached units are slightly higher ground level because the ground is changing and increasing in height. So the difference between the ridge height of the detached units and the existing ridge height of the neighbouring properties in Fairlawn Road is 1.3 metres. Obviously the semi-detached units are in between that measurement, so it is just slightly rising in height as you reach the end of the cul-de-sac. And then this is the street elevation that you can see in terms of the impact on the neighbours. So on the top one, you can see the relationship with number 11 Fairlawn Road. You can see that that's the substation in between the units. There's a distance of 4.5 metres between these properties. And in terms of the rear elevation, it is similarly in line to the rear elevation of the existing neighbouring property. So the impact on these properties are considered to be acceptable. The bottom one, you can see the impact on number 12. So they've got the 2-storey side extension. So there's a slightly smaller gap between the properties. This plot here is actually extending slightly further out. So I'll just show you that relationship. So this is the relationship with number 12. So you can see that number 6, plot 6, is a deeper property. It's 3.8 metres beyond the rear elevation of number 12. But you can see that the architect has placed the 45-degree line from the nearest window on the plan, and it just falls outside of that area. So we would actually be looking, as part of any approval, to restrict any future development of this plot, so it can't extend any further into the garden, which would then subsequently have an impact on number 12. In terms of overlooking, there's no side windows, there's no loss of privacy for the properties. So overall, the impact on these properties, given the distance or the limit or the depth, and the fact it doesn't fall within the 45-degree line, and the fact there's no side windows, the impact on these properties in terms of living conditions is considered to be acceptable. In terms of the actual future units, they meet the space standards. They each have gardens, and they have refuge storage to the front of the site. So this was an issue that came up to do with the highway. So obviously you can see the highway plan is to extend the cul-de-sac, but it does provide a turning head, which actually is a benefit for the road, because currently the road has no turning head at the end. So any vehicles that drive along here would just have to either do quite a big 3-point turn or reverse back. So this is actually a benefit for the road to have a turning head for smaller vehicles, but it isn't a turning head for a refuse truck, and it isn't a turning head for a fire engine, because they're much larger, and the turning head would need to be significantly larger as well. So concerns were originally raised in terms of whether that was an issue or not, and we have sought advice from the Waste and Recycling Department. They currently reversed down the road and said they would be happy on this occasion to reverse the extra distance in order to collect the refuse from these additional 6 units. And Highways advise that if that's the case, they have no concerns with the turn-in, and it would be a similar case for any fire truck. That again, the fire truck as existing would be reversing down the road. It would just be the same situation. They'd have to reverse slightly further. Obviously, ambulances and police cars and things like that would be able to turn because they're slightly smaller. So that Highways have said they have no concerns with the proposal. They're happy with the parking provision being provided. And they would support the provision of the pedestrian link if that can be achieved. In terms of landscaping and biodiversity, obviously, as mentioned, there's been concern with the loss of the trees on the site, but we're not able to protect those. They aren't protected, so the fact that these have been removed we can't do anything about that now, but we can look at whether we can try and improve biodiversity through this scheme. So KCC Biodiversity did raise some concerns with the lack of enhancements for ecology being shown on the site. So we have sort of amended plans to try and improve this. So if I just go through to the soft landscaping plan. So this is the soft landscaping plan as amended. It's showing native hedge planting around quite a lot of the boundaries. So we've got along the northern boundary here, further along the south, and around these boundaries here. You can see that they're now proposing new tree planting, so all of the number 7s on the circles, these are all new tree planting within the site. So there'll be additional 10 trees planted within the site. And also the plan now shows bat boxes and bee boxes, or bee holes within the building, which is what was encouraged by KCC Biodiversity. So they are also indicated on this plan and therefore would be provided. So on balance, whilst there is some loss of trees, there's quite large gardens, there's going to be new planting, and that's all controlled through the landscaping condition. The frontages have also been slightly amended because, again, these were fully hard surface, so we've attempted to try and achieve some soft landscaping to the front of these where we can in order to try and soften the development. So in terms of the legal agreement, there's a contribution required towards the SPA, which has been agreed to. The application is currently for defer and delegate for us to receive that legal agreement. We have actually received the signed copy of that legal agreement, so we are able to secure that contribution. So the application is recommended for approval even, sorry, right, on the basis that it is an allocated housing site, it's a sustainable site within close proximity of the town centre. The design is considered to be in keeping with the pattern of development and the character of the area. There's no significant highway or living condition issues, and therefore it is recommended for a defer and delegate for approval on the basis that we need the legal agreement, which we have, but is still subject to that coming in.
Thank you, Emma. I know it's getting late. Thank you. Thank you, members. I move the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bayford, Councillor Wright, take your pick. Right, members, it's over to you. Anybody wish to speak? Mike, Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for giving that presentation. I'm the local ward councillor, just Fairlawn Road, rather similar to the other one. Fairlawn Road isn't in my ward, but the bit of land that it's actually being built on is. And a number of the local residents have contacted me with a number of concerns about this and as much the associated application, which obviously we're considering this in isolation, but it's going to be very difficult to consider it in isolation because there are two that are delivering 50 houses in total on there. I think, like you said, it was allocated in the plan for 45. And there's quite a lot of crossover between the two, which we can't totally ignore. A couple of points I wanted to raise that were raised with me. You mentioned about KCC highways and the difficulty basically with extending Fairlawn Road and the any fire trucks, and certainly the waste recycling will have to reverse that little bit further. I know you said the waste and TDC waste recycling have accepted that. Well, I did read their submission, and I don't think they were particularly happy about it, but whether they had a lot of choice, I don't know. But it's certainly going to add, we saw on the picture all the cars parked either side, it's going to add to that, so it's going to make it a lot more difficult for collections. One thing that what hasn't been mentioned, but is mentioned in the report, is archaeology. And I didn't know this before, but actually there's quite a rich archaeological history on that site. A number of different things were mentioned, and there is a condition, I noticed, that a full archaeological survey has to be completed before any work starts on it. And this is where the link to the other application comes in, really, because to do a full application survey on the site, you need to use the whole. You need to do it on the whole site. You can't just take this little snapshot at the bottom of the site and do it there, totally ignore, and then get on with the building when the other site, which may or may not be developed later, hasn't been surveyed. So that's just something we have to consider. It needs to all to be done in one point. That's one of the reasons why I would have rather had both the applications, if possible, to come before us at the same time, because that would also help us to get a better understanding of the potential overcrowding on this whole site, which is allocated for 45, but actually delivering quite a few more houses. As we mentioned again with the highways, there is a condition that access to the site for construction can't be up Fairlawn Road. It has to be from Northwood Road via the entrance and exit that you showed us. As I understand it, that is part of the ownership of the other part of this site. I mean, obviously that needs confirming, but as I understand it, this site is apportioned to two different owners. So there's one with the other application for 44 and this one for 6. So again, this is where the two applications come in. I don't understand how this development can be started. Sorry, that's my medication alarm. I can wait though. No. So I don't understand how development on this one small site at the end can actually progress without the other application being considered at the same time and access being granted to the different developer to come and develop on this site. The other thing I want to mention, biodiversity. Yeah, it is very disappointing actually that this site a number of years ago had a lot more trees on it, and they have, as you say, they're not covered by a TPO, so you know the owner of the site is quite within their rights legally, if not morally, to cut all the trees, as many trees as they like down. So it's very difficult to know when measuring net biodiversity gain or loss starts. Because if we take it from before the trees were cut down, there's not going to be any chance of any sort of net biodiversity gain on this site. But by the developer cutting all the tree or the majority of the trees down, they're in with a shout of getting some net biodiversity gain on the site. And I did notice, read in the submission from KCC Biodiversity, that they did ask, they were sort of aware of that, and I think you mentioned this, but they want to see an ongoing programme of clear ecological enhancements for breeding birds and bats, including provision for bat boxes and native planting. So really we're going to be relying on the people who buy these houses to contribute to net biodiversity gain now. It's all very well putting a few trees on the plan to say they're going to be planted there, but unless we're putting like individual TPOs or any other sort of constraints on people who buy those houses, they're only going to last as long as what the people who buy the houses want them to last. So I think this application, without being considered in the whole with the other one, falls down on the net biodiversity gain. I think I'll leave it at that for now, and hopefully some other people will be able to contribute to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. You worried me there for a moment. Before I bring in Councillor Everett, Emma.
I just wanted to come back on a few of those points. So in terms of the construction access, this condition has been agreed with the applicant. So yeah, there are two separate sites, but they currently are accessed from that Northwood Road access. The condition was put on because of the concerns raised by residents regarding construction vehicle traffic, and it seemed reasonable to require that the construction vehicle should come from Northwood Road, being that is the existing access point to the site and will result in the least disruption for the residents. And I think it's likely then that that if a separate developer to the other site deals with this site, obviously they'll have to get the agreement with that developer to be able to achieve it. If they can't, they'll have to come back in with a separate application to vary that condition, which we will again look at. In terms of what you're mentioning in terms of the two sites, I agree it would have been useful if maybe the two sites could have come forward at the same time, but unfortunately we're still negotiating on the other application, looking at the overall layout and number of units on that application, and we've had a lot of concerns on that one raised by residents. So again, that's currently being negotiated. They are quite separate sites. This site is seen in the context of Fairlawn Road. The other site will be separate, its own development that's going to be accessed off Northwood Road. In terms of the conditions, each site has to comply with its own conditions. So an archaeology condition for this site would have to be complied for this site. They would look at whether they need to do any sort of digs on the site to look for any archaeology, but all they would be required to do is this area. They wouldn't be expected to do beyond that. So it's difficult to suggest that we could look at the site as a whole. Obviously, if KCC Archaeology asks for the same condition on the neighbouring site, which they are likely to do, then there will be the requirement to deal with that, but it's just going to be done separately. In terms of the biodiversity point, yes, it's a shame that the trees were lost. I mean, we've attempted through amendments to get as much improvement with the landscaping through this development, with the native planting, with the bird and bee boxes, with the new tree planting, which wasn't originally proposed as part of this scheme. We've attempted to do what we can with a site that is allocated for housing, and basically we have to accept that there is going to be housing on it. What can we do though to try and get as much biodiversity benefits as possible? And it's considered that this reaches that appropriate balance given the fact that the previous trees weren't protected or in a conservation area. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Everett.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't see anything wrong with the application personally, but I'm just curious about this rather strange parking court. I mean, it appears to me to be some sort of a contrivance to escape the fact that they can't get two vehicles on the front of the two detached properties and accommodate the turning head. So it's rather a strange thing. Now, Emma referred to the gardens being large, so perhaps the garden of the property at the top right is large, even though it looks quite truncated on there. Perhaps you could tell me how big that garden is, please.
Can you do that? Yep.
Yes. Hang on, I did write this down, sorry. Here it is. 7.5 metres depth is the smallest garden, which would be that top right-hand plot. And then the other properties have gardens of 23.5 metres deep. So, yeah, I think that parking court's been created. Obviously, they needed some visitor parking spaces. And you're right, they couldn't actually achieve the parking spaces at the front of the properties if you were going to get the turning head in, which, as I've mentioned, the turning head is beneficial for the road. So if they end up just trying to put some parking spaces to the front of the properties and not achieving the turning head, I just think the turning head is beneficial. So that's why we've ended up with the 2 parking spaces in the parking court, which, whilst not completely easily located to the properties, there's the footpath obviously runs down to them, and it would be like the second car that's used within the property, and they do have that 1 parking space at the front for the main user.
Can I just say, Chair, I mean, it does seem 21 foot, I think 7.5 metres, roughly what we're talking about. It's quite a shallow garden for a property that big. I'm not saying that we should turn it down on those grounds. It just seems to me a bit undesirable.
Thank you, Councillor Everett. Councillor Keane.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify something because I think Councillor Garner raised a really interesting point about biodiversity gain and when do we start from, because surely this leads to people being able to chop down all the trees and that in advance and then just plant one and it's a gain.
We may have an answer for you here, Councillor Keane.
So I was going to come in earlier, but I can speak to this. So the changes that are occurring this year to be enacted next year in the Town and Country Planning Act to bring the Environment Act into sort of a statutory responsibility for planning applications will include the provision for small sites like this to have to submit a certain amount of information with their planning application, which will include the use of a metric that's been created by DEFRA, which will work out and calculate on biodiversity units whether or not there is net gain or not. Now, the key bit you raise is, well, someone could just cut down everything on the site and then they, put it in and say, oh, we've planted 1 tree, therefore it's a gain. That provision is effectively going to be the starting point is going to be on the basis of the date when the Environment Act came into force, which was last year, beginning of this year. That date, which is now already gone. So basically what would happen is if someone then cut stuff down, we would refer, and KCC Biodiversity would refer to the aerial photographs that we've got of the site when they were dated, the street view images, and say, well, there are trees here that clearly that data that you've provided us is insufficient. So there is going to be provision within the changes in the Town and Country Planning Act to look at that point. At the moment, there is still provision within the National Planning Policy Framework to look at biodiversity net gain in paragraph 174. But with this scheme, for example, we would always look to try and get enhancements above where we are now and that starting point. But in the future, when looking at biodiversity net gain in a much more detailed fashion, which is what will be happening when the Act changes for the Planning Act, we will have a lot more data and we will be able to sort of avoid developers just raising a site and then putting it in, basically.
Thank you. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that personally, I can't see anything wrong with this site. I think that planned housing is never going to fit exactly into the spot we want to put it. Compromises have to be made. I think many of the concerns have been hypothetical. From what we see tonight, I can't see any reason to refuse this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members. I can't see Councillor Garner.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back because I just wanted to make a couple of points, or at least it sounds like this is likely to be approved. So I would like just like to make a couple. I went up there earlier today, and which is where I saw there quite a lot of trees being cut down. Quite a few haven't, and there is still quite a large amount of hedges. There is a lot of life up there at the moment. There's a lot of birds flying about, starting to build their nests. So I know there's a condition on there about not being able to cut down trees or hedges during the bird nesting season. So we are in the bird nesting season. So they wouldn't be able to start work on this until the end of the bird nesting season, which is obviously next October. So I would hope that we keep an eye on, someone will keep an eye on them. I certainly will. And if I let anybody know that work has started there, hopefully action will be taken. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Garner. Okay, members, I'm going to put this to the vote. Those in favour for defer and delegate, please show your hands. Those against? Abstentions? That is carried. Thank you, members. We haven't finished yet. Agenda item 5. I'm going to change my glasses. Which is the former Westonville garage. Most of us know it as, or knew it as Jenner's on the Canterbury Road, Margate. You never guess who the planning officer is who is going to give out the report on this. I wonder who. Thank you, Emma.
Okay, so this is brought back before members due to the length of time that's passed since the since the previous case was brought before members. So it was brought before members in February 2020 with a resolution to grant was made subject to the submission of a signed legal agreement within 6 months of the committee date. The signed legal agreement has just been submitted, so it's now 2 years since that committee meeting. In that time, we've had the new local plan adopted. So this has just been brought back before members, just to put it back before you, looking at an update in relation to the new local plan, and due to the fact that the legal agreement's taken so long to come in. So just to remind members of this application, so it's this site area here. So we've got Westbrook Gardens on the left and Canterbury Road on the right hand side here, and this is an aerial view of the site. So this is the Tesco's Express in Westbrook, and you can see this is the site here, and then another view of the site. So you can see it's overgrown area. I think formerly it was a garage site. You can see the outline of the original building, but there's now no presence of any buildings on the site, and we previously considered this. Through the reason it actually came to members originally was because it was classed as being non-previously developed land, and policy H1 that we had at the time said that if it was non-previously developed land, it was had to be brought before members as a departure to the policy. So this is now no longer the case. The policy H01 allows for development in the urban confines. It doesn't require it to be non-previously developed land. No, previously developed land. Doesn't require it to be previously developed land. It can be non-previously developed land and still comply with the policy as long as it's within the urban confines. So it's now no longer a departure to the plan. So this is just the application site. Here you can see it's again very overgrown. This is a view again from Canterbury Road looking towards the site. And you can see again Tesco's on the right hand side here. And then you can just see the sites on the left here. And this is again looking with the application site in the distance here. And then this is now taken from next to Tesco's. The application site is on the left, just so you can see the nearest neighbouring property to the site. And then again, just taken from the other side of the road, looking towards it. And again, you can see, so with this, you could just see the scale of the development around there. It's mainly 3 stories around there. And again, this is now taken from the side road. I've forgotten the name of it. Westbrook Gardens, sorry. Yeah, Westbrook Gardens with the application site here. And just throwing this one in, this is just basically the Sea Bathing development. You can see that how this has progressed. This would have been since the previous application was in. So this is just in Westbrook Gardens, the under end of Westbrook Gardens, with the application site on the right-hand side. So the proposal that came before members before, it was an application for a part 3-storey, part 4-storey, part 5-storey building comprising 15 2-bed flats and 3 1-bed flats with basement parking. So just to remind you, this is the ground floor plan showing the units. So there was some gardens to the front with some hedging, and then this is the access into the basement parking on the left-hand side here from Westbrook Gardens. And then ground floor, and then this is the upper floors. So they've got balconies on the front wrapping round. And then this is the top floor. So the top floor was set in from both sides in order to reduce the overall dominance of the building and better relate to the neighbours. This is the basement parking area, which enabled 16 parking spaces. And then these were the elevations of the scheme. So you can see that there's quite a few amendments when this application was in, trying to make sure that it tied in with the neighbouring properties and sat well within the street. And the top floor, as I mentioned, was originally larger, and we reduced that in scale. And you can see the variation of materials and balconies on that elevation. So that's how the elevation sits within Canterbury Road in relation to Tesco's. But in terms of the height, the main height with it is similar to buildings around there. Obviously, it's quite a prominent corner location on a main road, so it can take a larger building. And then this was a view from Westbrook Gardens. So this view was design slightly different, where it tried to reflect the design of the existing properties within Westbrook Gardens. So you can see the similar fenestration and balcony details at the similar levels. And then this was the side view and the rear view. And this was the impression of what the scheme would look like. So in terms of relating it to the new plan, as mentioned, one of the main issues is the fact that it's no longer a departure to the plan because it now complies with policy SB01 and policy H01. In terms of the impact on the character of the area, policy D1 has been replaced with policy QD01, but it basically looks at the same thing. Is it in keeping with the character of the area? Does it enhance the area? Is the scale and design acceptable? So this was previously considered to be acceptable, so we don't consider that there's anything that's changed now that would warrant us looking at any different conclusion to this. In terms of the living conditions, we now have the nationally described space standards policy that's come in, so that wasn't considered when the original application was in. So we've looked at all the flat sizes just to check it complies, and they do. So the unit schedule has been submitted with it. We can see that it does meet the minimum, which is the for a 1-bed 2-person unit it was 50, and for the 2-bed 4-person unit it's 70. So they are achieving those. Then in terms of the transport, the parking is still obviously at basement level. There's no change in the parking provision. We still look at the interim guidance note 3 for parking provision, so that hasn't changed. So the impact on highway is fine. And in terms of the affordable housing, so this site is one where either they can develop this site and provide 30%, or it's actually attached to a site that's in Cliftonville on the seafront. And this was actually, when that scheme was approved, this was actually the affordable housing contribution for that site. So if that site goes ahead, this needs to be fully affordable housing. If this site goes ahead on its own, it needs 30%. So the legal agreement, that's why it's taken so long to get this legal agreement sorted, because it has to have these two options within it, either the 30% or fully providing it and linking back to the legal agreement of the other scheme in Cliftonville. So in terms of the unit sizes and mix, that's been slightly updated recently with the new SMAR, but it's similar to what was previously proposed. And really there's all the other policies, there's no other issue. So ecology, drainage, contamination, archaeology, nothing really needs updating with those because these were all previously considered fine. And no changes to the financial contributions. They're now within this legal agreement. They've signed it, the council has signed and sealed it, and therefore we are now happy to approve the application. It complies with the local development plan, and we have the legal agreement, so it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. I recommend the officer's recommendation. Seconder, please. Councillor Orban, are there any members wish to speak? Councillor Crittenden.
I would just like a comment, really. I think the building doesn't really look like it's terribly in keeping with the area, but apart from that, I really don't have any objections. I think it is at least an improvement on the land as it is at the moment.
Can I come in? If I may come in, which is very unusual for me to comment. This is in Westbrook Ward, as you might gather. The site itself has been derelict for a long, long time, as you've seen by the pictures. Obviously, we all know we get complaints and everything else. This is one of them. The view here, and obviously you've seen other photographs of the views of this proposed property. Okay, if you go down Westbrook Gardens to the left of this photograph, yes, they're all some Victorian, and I used to live down there, not in Victorian times, before anyone says anything. But as you go round onto the Canterbury Road, you have the Tesco building, which is fairly modern, few older shops, but then you go down to another development where the old Dog and Duck pub used to be. That again is a more of a modern, so totally understand what you're saying, and I hope you don't mind me just coming in on that, but it would be good to see. Yep.
It's got to be an improvement.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other members? Thank you very much. I'm going to put that to the vote then. Those in favour, please show. Anybody against? No abstentions. That is carried. Thank you, members. A special thank you to Emma tonight for doing a marathon run, and Charles. Thank you to Charles, who's sitting quietly up the end, Andy, and yourselves. Don't forget site visit on the 1st of April. Take care and good night. Thank you.
Sorry.